In the world of alien-like creatures that exist in nature, perhaps the strangest of them all is the axolotl. This cartoon-like little creature with a very simplistic set of features belongs to the salamander family and can come in various shapes and sizes. However, perhaps the most iconic is that of the white axolotl, or otherwise known as the albino axolotl. However seemingly simple this creature looks, it does come with a very unique type of coloration with subtle pinks and reds that kind of flow throughout the entire structure of their body, providing us with a great drawing exercise to understand some color and how to represent this very unique structure in a realistic way. With that being said, hey guys, my name is Matt. Welcome to another very unique tutorial by artandcontext.org, where we explore various art related topics, and in today's video we will be looking at how to draw a realistic axolotl through a few simple steps. Now we will be working with colors and a layering process, so you can use whatever materials you have available to you as long as they are conducive to that kind of drawing process. However, the way in which we're going to start this tutorial is by just a simple shaping of the axolotl, where we start with a very simple sketch with the intention of capturing the basic outline of the animal. So we want to lightly assemble the axolotl with its main features, making sure that all features are proportionally correct. And this is where we try to capture the cylindrical type of body. We want to capture the spear-headed shape of the head, and we also want to make sure that as we shift towards the tail, it does become slightly more narrow. So a good suggestion is to also work with a reference image, providing us with a more effective approach to representing the axolotl as accurately as possible. We also want to make sure we capture the external gills along either side of the head, and we want to think of this feature kind of like a crown. So we'll find that if we look at a reference image, it is a very unique feature, but as we continue throughout the body, slowly bringing out the outline of the animal, we also want to make sure that the face is a flat spade shape with a very small beady eye on either side of the head. So just try to remember that the eyes are very simple as these circular button-like features, but depending on the perspective from which you are drawing the axolotl, one of them might be more visible than the other. But as we continue, we also want to make sure that the back feet have 5 digits, whereas the front feet have 4 digits, which is a very subtle detail, but a very unique detail to the axolotl. Now we're going to start moving into adding some base layers of color. So this is where we start to layer colors into the structure of the axolotl's body, starting with very light hues of pink. Again, the albino axolotl isn't necessarily completely white. There are many ways to kind of approach how to integrate color into this very unique animal. So we want to work with very soft pinks and oranges as two tonal variations to bring some shape to the various features. We want to keep these colors within the outline of the axolotl drawing, making sure we are maintaining the general structure and shape of the axolotl. Otherwise, take your time with bringing some shape to the dorsal fin. This is a very unique and very seamless feature that emerges from the back and flows all the way to the edge of the tail. Now as we continue, take a moment to bring a general shape to these features, which once done can be slightly blended to establish a base color of the axolotl drawing, and this is going to set up the foundation on which we will start to integrate more layers of color. We want to make sure there is a light coloration of pink, orange and purple hues that basically lightly define the structure of the axolotl, and because the axolotl is somewhat translucent, it kind of represents the features underneath the surface area of the skin as these very soft details that kind of protrude from beneath the surface area of the skin. So we will find we work with these soft moments of merging details without necessarily having these harsh distinct lines to represent these features, but in a way that seems as if it is seen from behind the surface area of the skin. Now we're going to start adding some color details. So we can start defining the structures of these various features by using a combination of colors. This is where we can start bringing more shape to the outline of the axolotl drawing as a start. So we can start incorporating some shading into the body, starting with the head of the axolotl. Now this is where we also start to give a little bit more three-dimensionality to the face, around the eyes as well. And when we think about the spectrum of the color of the axolotl, we want to think about how we can represent shadows and highlights whilst maintaining a color consistency within that spectrum. So this is why we want to work with some reds and purples to kind of maintain this pink coloration, but to bring more dimension to these various details. We can also start darkening the eyes of the axolotl, and a good suggestion is to set an undertone of purple before adding hues of black. We can also maintain the subtle highlights in the eye to keep it a little bit more three-dimensional and realistic, representing the glassy, spherical quality within the eye. We also want to take our time with the head of the axolotl as we incorporate some line work and shading to define the structure of these features. And again, this is where we start to think about the protruding nature of the eye, creating some shadow formation around it to represent how that structure kind of moves out from the head. Now, as you slowly integrate these subtle protrusions through the use of some soft mark making, think about the color choices that you want to make in terms of, again, maintaining that spectrum of pink. So working with subtle hues of orange is also just a very complementary color to utilize as a way of creating more definitive marks. But again, we're trying to keep our marks really soft. So this is where you really want to consider blending your colors as seamless as possible as they merge with one another. Now, as we proceed, we can set the color within the external gills, and we can do this by making the finger-like structures pink with red strokes around them. With the ribcage area, we can work with blues and purples. Now again, this is where we're trying to represent this idea of features underneath the surface area of the skin, kind of slightly visible. So we basically want to create these very soft strokes to represent the internal features, creating these protrusions from beneath the surface area of the skin. The idea is to take our time building up the colors within our axolotl drawing, where we slowly start to bring more shape to the different features, and we want to be very soft with our shading, making sure that we maintain those seamless transitions between the various colors by blending them. Now, as we continue, we can also start working in some darker orange hues to define a separation between the dorsal fin and the rest of the body as it connects to the dorsal fin. Now again, remember the axolotl is a translucent animal, which means you can kind of partly see through it. However, obviously because the body is more dense and filled with external features, it's kind of harder to see through it entirely, where the dorsal fin tends to be slightly lighter, as it can be kind of seen through more distinctly than that of the actual body structure. So creating that separation in color is just a great way to not only define the ridge of the dorsal fin, but also define the translucent quality of the dorsal fin. Purples and blues are also just a great way to define the shadows that are defined by the protruding structure or internal bones within the body, and this is just a great way to emphasize their very unique translucent qualities. Now spend a good portion of time slowly working through the entire structure of the axolotl's body, working from the head through to the body, through to the limbs, thinking about what kind of colors effectively represent the shape of the axolotl and its various features. We do want to maintain that pink coloration and those very subtle shifts from pink to orange as we slowly start to define various structures in more dimension, but then we can again represent the internal features like the bones and so on with these hues of purples and blues in a very soft and subtle way to kind of maintain that quality of three-dimensionality within the internal structures of the bones beneath the surface area of the skin. Now we can start refining the details, so we now want to be slightly more distinct with line work and shading as we work our way through the various features, and this is where we can add a set of little red strokes along the external gills. So this is where we basically start to enhance the very unique features, and we can start by working on the gills with these little red strokes. We can define these details with little thin hair-like strokes of red that run along the side of the finger-like gills, almost like that of a plant with various leaflets that sprout from a singular branch. We can also start incorporating more defined outlines into the feet, as well as some darker shading near the bottom of the mouth. Again, the intention here is to become a little bit more strategic in terms of creating more three-dimensionality in these various features. So we want to keep the underbelly darker to establish a surface area that is less exposed to a light source. By doing so, again, we do represent that cylindrical structure in the body and how the lower section or the bottom or underbelly section of the body is slightly more shaded, having more shadow and therefore less exposed to a light source, and slowly becomes lighter as we come to the side of the axolotl's body. As we define the limbs, we can now work with hues of reds that are again kind of on the darker side of the spectrum of pink. As we shade along the legs to define their three-dimensional cylindrical structure, we can also start doing this in between the fingers or the digits of both feet, or both sets of feet that are visible within our axolotl drawing. And with the tail, we also want to make sure we utilize colors to define the ridge of that dorsal fin that extends all the way to the tip of the tail. Remember, we do want to maintain that distinction between the dorsal fin in coloration to that of the actual body or the features from the body into the tail. As we continue, we can also start to make sure we use reds and oranges to define that dorsal fin on the top of the axolotl's body, which again will create a significant distinction between the dorsal fin and the body. So making sure we use reds and oranges to define the dorsal fin on top of the axolotl will create that distinction, and we really want to make sure we are representing a variation in feature and colors to represent features with the lighter pink body and the slightly darker red and orange dorsal fin. But otherwise, as we slowly work in these very seamless transitions between our colors, we want to make sure that the body is also lighter along the side near the rib cage of the axolotl. And again, this is going to represent not only that translucent quality, maintain that translucent quality, but it's going to represent how the most protruding aspect of the body is therefore more exposed to a light source and enhance the three-dimensional aspects of the actual animal. Otherwise, take your time with the striations in the rib cage. This is a very unique feature, but remember, we want to make sure they appear as soft as they can as they shift into the side of the axolotl's body. Features protruding from beneath the surface area of the skin will be less distinct, so that's why we want to maintain a very soft representation of them. We also want to make sure we maintain that feather-like appearance or leaf-like appearance within the external gills with the red strokes, and we can also add some highlights along the gill structure for a more three-dimensional quality in terms of how highlights might interact with that structure. Now, as we continue, we also want to make sure that the transition of color between these various features again is as soft as possible. This is a very specific kind of detail we want to maintain throughout the entire structure, so we don't necessarily want distinct lines. So take your time, especially within the body, blending these colors for a more accurate depiction of these very subtle features, as this will maintain the translucent quality of the albino axolotl. We can also make the outline of the limbs slightly more distinct. In this case, we also want to work with some red shading between the fingers and toes to really emphasize the three-dimensional nature of those features, and we want to make sure we establish shadows and highlights in the limbs to emphasize their cylindrical quality. Remember to work within the spectrum of the colors that you are utilizing within the various features. In the case of the limbs, we want to work with these oranges and reds as a darker variation of the pink spectrum to emphasize the shadows within those features. Another important thing is to make sure you are maintaining your shadow formations to one side to really keep you also want to make sure you are representing your shadow formations on a single side within these various features to maintain that quality of a light source being from one single side, and therefore your shadows remaining consistent to one side for both legs. But otherwise, guys, from this point onwards, we should find that our axolotl drawing is coming to a completion, and from here on out, it is just a matter of going over all these details one last time and remember to know when to stop. We don't want to overpower our axolotl drawing with too much shading and highlights. And there you have it, guys, how to draw an axolotl in a few simple steps. If you did like this video and are interested in similar or related topics on how to draw animals, very unique animals, whether it is sea-bound or land-based animals, please let us know in the comment section below. We would love to hear back from you guys, and you can show your support by liking and subscribing. That helps us to grow the channel, which ultimately enables us to make more art related content for you guys, which we love to do. But otherwise, that is it from us today. Thanks again for watching. Until next time, see you in the next video. Cheers.